What's going on, everyone? This week is going to be very action-packed. We're going to have a lot to cover. We're going to have a lot to track. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the entire market, the crypto market. We're going to talk about earnings week, what should and shouldn't happen, as well as the levels that you guys need to take into consideration moving forward this week. All right. So without further ado, let's get started with the video. All right. Just look at how jam-packed this schedule is. Obviously, there's so many stocks to talk about, but specifically, Tuesday after the close, Microsoft and Google. Wednesday, Facebook after the close. And then Thursday, we've got Apple and Amazon. Obviously, so many more stocks, but this week is going to be very important for the SPY and the NASDAQ both. All right. So what happens here is going to really judge whether or not. So basically, this is my assumption of what's going to happen in the market. If these stocks do not outperform earnings expectations, so for example, if they meet earnings expectations or they underperform just a little bit, these stocks and the overall market, I think, are going to be very bearish. The only way for these stocks to jump up is if they really beat earnings expectations. I'm not talking about by a little bit. They have to really beat earnings expectations, because now that the Fed is extremely hawkish, Powell is very hawkish. There's a lot that he spoke about on in the past meeting that was very bad for the stock market. And since that happened about 2 days ago, the market dropped dramatically. So these stocks having earnings this week, very scary. Basically, if they don't report good earnings, it's going to really take a hit on the market. And currently, we are short the market. Let's go ahead and talk about the SPY. So right here in my last video, you can see that I said that 435.5 was a make or break area. Anything below 446 was bearish. And quite clearly, that was the case. We broke down below 435.5 and vomited to the downside. And we are now almost closing, very close to closing below 425. So this is very bearish, obviously. And basically 2 days ago, we touched 450 on the dot, and we've been falling ever since. So zooming out, we've dropped 14 points. 24 points in 24 points in the past 2 days. All right. So obviously, this was a huge dramatic move to the downside. So now moving forward, we basically just have to see the most important levels to the downside for the SPY are going to be 425 and then 420. If 420 does not hold, then we are going to come back and retest this 415.79 level. Very important level. So 425, 420, and then this 415.79 level. Those are the three major levels of support to the downside. So now just taking a look at the indicators. The MACD indicator. So number one, the SPY had a huge move to the downside. And the MACD indicator just now, slowly, look at how small of a cross down this was. A very baby crossover to the downside, which is showing that there's a lot more room to the downside in terms of momentum. So clearly that is very bearish. What we needed from the SPY for us to continue going upwards was similar to what we were looking at on Bitcoin, is this white MACD line needed to really move upwards and stay above. We needed to cross above 446. We needed to start closing green. But now the fact that we've broken past major levels of support and the MACD indicator looks very bearish, this is not a good sign. All right, so now what could end up happening is we can end up running up into earnings. So essentially Tuesday, Microsoft and Google have earnings, right? What could end up happening is, because we've dropped down so low, there can be a nice little relief bounce into Monday. So Monday or Tuesday, there could be a really nice relief bounce. So for example, if we fall down to between 420 to 425 on Monday. Into Tuesday, there could be a nice relief bounce, and that would be a good opportunity to scalp long. But again, so we just have to trade these levels blindly at this point. Regardless of what we think could or couldn't happen, regardless of what I think could happen, usually what tends to happen is with large tech stocks, almost always, you can always buy calls a day or two in advance from when they report earnings, even the day of. There's always usually a run-up, and then they drop it after hours. So just keep that in mind for Tuesday, for Wednesday, and for Thursday specifically, since these large tech stocks are going to have earnings. So the levels that you have to look for to the upside are going to be above this zone here. So if we're below 425, obviously 425 is going to be the next level of resistance that you have to watch for. Then this zone, if we can break back above this zone here, above 430 essentially, that would be a nice little scalping opportunity back up to 433.50. So from 430 to 433.50 is a nice opportunity to go long. But again, there is no real reason to become overly bullish on the market again until we break back above 435.5, in my opinion. Until then, if you don't want to scalp long, all of these opportunities are just going to be shorting opportunities. And especially if Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday we have bad earnings, this is going to be devastating for the market, and the market is going to continue falling lower. But again, there's that for the super, super bearish perspective. All right. The other things that we have to look for is clearly now the SPY is trading very outside of the lower Bollinger Band. All right, let me clean this chart up real quick. So it's trading outside of the lower B band here, very clearly. All right. If you look at this number right here, you can see the lower B band number. It's 429.64. You can see right now the SPY closed at 426. Yesterday, that B band level was 433.70, and then it went to 429.64. So that's a 4-point move to the downside. What we're looking for on Monday is we want the SPY to open outside. So, for example, if that lower Bollinger Band number is 426, all right, say, for example, that 425.50, right? We want the SPY to be at 424. We want it to open at 424. And what we're going to do is we're going to buy calls. We're going to buy 0 data expiration calls. And those are going to come. So basically, the reason for that is because the SPY, the IWM, and the NASDAQ, all major ETFs, when they open up outside of the lower standard deviation, they always come back and touch the lower B band intraday. So that is, it has happened every single time in history that I've ever seen it. And that's one of the easiest trades. If you watch my channel, you would know that's exactly what we did back here when we opened up on February 24th. And at the open at 9:30 a.m., I alerted SPY calls and we caught that bottom. And that was just an obvious gimme play. I posted an emergency video at like that night at like 12 a.m. because we saw the futures open so low. And it worked out beautifully. So if we have a similar scenario, it doesn't even need to be this far down, but if we have a similar scenario to where the SPY is trading anywhere outside the lower B band, that is going to be an amazing opportunity to go long intraday. So that is something that we have to look for now. The fact that we're trading outside of the lower B band on the SPY is a good indication that we are now pretty overextended to the downside in the short term. So, having a short-term bounce is understandable at this point. So even if we have a green open on Monday, until we break above 430, there's no real reason to go long again intraday. Any of these bounces that we have, say for example, we open up at 427 or 428, regardless, that does not mean anything. We need to have a break and strong momentum above 430 for us to think about being bullish in the short term, especially on Monday. Any of those moves are just better shorting opportunities to go lower. So keep that in mind. Overall, the SPY looks garbage. All right. Now, let's take a look at the IWM. The IWM looks terrifying at the moment because it's not even trading outside of the lower B band. The MACD has not crossed below yet. And we're basically at the March 14 lows. Whereas the SPY was basically, if you take a look at where the SPY is, the SPY was basically at the 786% fib. The IWM is almost retested at the initial point where I drew the fib line. All right, so we are about to cross down below a major level of support here on the IWM. Anything below 192 is going to be very, very bearish. And then obviously 190 is another major level of support. And yeah, this is just very, very bearish for the IWM as well. And then of course, the fact that there's still so much more room to the downside in regards to even being, we're not even overextended to the downside on the IWM in terms of the MACD. So there is so much more room to the downside. But again, because we had such a devastating few days, it makes sense that there could be a bounce. And I'm going to show you that, guys, with the chart of the VIX. So obviously, we can just go into detail about, oh my God, the market, the IWM looks so bad, right? The VIX will give a better understanding of overextension as well. So back in late January, so right now the VIX is obviously closed outside of the upper B band. That basically means that the market is very bearish right now, obviously, right? So the VIX has major support or resistance at around 29. But just because we're outside of the upper B band does not mean anything, because we can continue outside for quite some time. Okay? And that is what looks like is going to end up happening. If earnings this week are very, very bad, the VIX can just continue moving upwards, and this can just be the beginning of this move. So if we're looking at the Bollinger, the upper level of the Bollinger Band, all right? So we can see it went from 24.34 to 25.9. That's not the most abrupt move upward. And because the VIX can easily be trading outside of the B bands much easier than the SPY and the other ETFs, there is a lot more chance that the VIX is just going to continue moving upwards. So just keep that in mind. The VIX is very, very bullish, which again is very bearish for the market. You can see that the MACD on the VIX just barely crossed upwards, which means that there's a lot more explosive room to the upside. But again, when things look this bearish, there is usually a bounce. Okay, so just keep that in mind. There should be a bounce. There should be some sort of an intraday bounce, because even when you look at, all right, let's take a look back at the SPY. Say, for example, we open up really low. There should be some sort of an intraday bounce. Back here when we had this move down here on January 20th. Before we really started capitulating to the downside. At this point, this candle right here on the 21st was just extreme. This was basically the end of the downward move, these two candles. But this candle can be something that'll end up happening tomorrow, where we have a retest of the highs. All right, so we could end up opening green, retesting with this wick. So we can open up green. This is what happened. So we opened up green. Obviously, we closed at 451. We opened at 453. We rallied up to 458, and then we just capitulated down. So that is something that could be happening on Monday. So keep that in mind. We could come back and retest all the way up to 433. That is completely possible. So just keep that in mind. Be ready to go long above key levels of resistance. The only time you're going to go long is above key levels of resistance, above 433, and maybe above 426. Anything else is just gambling. All right? Only buy as strength occurs. don't try to catch any falling knives, because right now the market is clearly bearish. If you don't want to take any risk, don't try to go long, because right now the market is clearly bearish. Anything below 435 and anything below 430, obviously bearish. I'm just giving extra plays for scalpers. All right, so there was that for the SPY and the IWM and the VIX. Let's take a look at the large tech stocks and the NASDAQ. Apple, once again, very bearish. It's not good. The MACD has not even crossed below yet. We broke down below 163.74, and we're not even trading outside of the lower B band. So there's a lot more room to the downside on Apple. Once again, this MACD, when things look really bearish like this, on the indicators, there should be a bounce. We could end up having a big down day tomorrow, but there should be a bounce, in my opinion. But anyway, regardless of what I think could happen, the Apple looks very bearish. Take a look at Microsoft. Very bearish. The lower Bollinger Band is nowhere to be seen. It's so far away to the downside, which means that overextension to the downside is going to be needed to be very extreme for us to have a downward day where we're overextended to the downside. We are basically like 5 points away from the lower B band, and it's only falling sharply lower, which means there's a lot more room to the downside, unfortunately, for Microsoft. The MACD has still not even, it doesn't even look like it's about to cross lower, and we're already having huge multiple red days. Clearly not good. All right, Google is trading outside of the lower B band. I think it's almost, I think it's 20% away from where it was from the stock split news. So clearly not a bullish sign for Google. The RSI is almost oversold on Google. So the RSI is at 30. Anything below 30 is oversold on the RSI. So there could be a short-term bounce on Google. So just keep that in mind. Google is a large $1 trillion company, and when these companies are very overextended to the downside, they don't last that long. There is usually a bounce. So just keep that in mind. Amazon, super bearish, obviously, right? Tesla, reversed back from earnings, not looking too great. And Facebook, really bearish. But that trade that I said, where so the Bollinger Band intraday fell even lower afterward, but we opened at basically, we opened at 180. Oh, sorry, we opened at 190. And then if we had bought calls, so on Friday I bought IWM calls at the open. Should have just bought Facebook calls at the open, because what I was saying on Thursday's video, that if Facebook opens outside of the lower B band, is going to reverse back, and it's an easy call play. That's exactly what ended up happening. I just overlooked Facebook because made a mistake there. But oh well, Facebook, easy call, and then we ended up closing even lower. So we are very overextended on both Facebook and on Google, and these companies are very large. So what that's telling me is that there should be a bounce soon. But again, all of the indicators are very bearish. And this RSI is barely falling lower, even though we're having multiple red days. We're not even oversold yet on the RSI. And so currently we closed at 184. The lower B band closed at 191. So if Facebook ends up at around 182 or 183, and the lower B band is at anything higher, again, it's going to be a good opportunity to go long at the open, in my opinion. So keep that in mind for Facebook. There's that for the large tech stocks. What we learned, so now what we learned is Google and Facebook are very overextended to the downside. In general, all of these large tech stocks are very bearish in terms of the technical indicators, and Microsoft has a lot more room to the downside. So they're all super bearish setups heading into earnings week. This is not good, obviously, because when the Fed is hawkish, wants to increase interest rates abruptly, much quicker than they said that they would, that is going to affect these large tech stocks that rely on debt and basically rely on their interest rates and everything that they get from the banks. So it's taking a hit on these tech-related stocks. So we have to see what earnings is this week, and it's going to be really, really fun. So there's that for the large tech stocks. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. And now we can also see the NASDAQ is trading outside of the lower B band. We can see that the MACD is barely showing any weakness here. It barely moved, actually. And this had a huge abrupt move to the downside. So again, when the indicators are showing this much weakness, there should be a bounce. All right, so now essentially we could end up bouncing to 330 to 333. To 334. So basically this whole little zone here. And in my opinion, there's no reason to really try to go long again until, so first of all, we are super bearish on the NASDAQ until we break back above 335. Sorry, no, 340. This is 341. I'm not even sure what I'm looking at. So 341. As we break above this zone here, see the number? 341 on the NASDAQ, there's no reason to go long again. For scalps intraday, obviously these levels of resistance are going to be the nice little resistance levels that you can scalp above, 333 and 335.50. But overall, until the NASDAQ breaks and closes back above 341, there's no reason to be bullish again on the NASDAQ. Currently, the NASDAQ is super, super bearish. We are in a downtrend. Do not try to catch any falling knives because the market can just continue falling lower. And all of this, we should have a bounce talk that I'm giving is, it could just end up, we can just have our capital just sitting there doing nothing. So yes, if you want to start scaling into longer term calls, that's completely fine. If you want to start scaling into longer term NASDAQ calls, thinking that earnings are going to be good, you can do that. But again, the safest thing to do is wait until resistance levels are broken above before you start scaling into longs heavily. All right. So just keep that in mind. We're currently short the market over the weekend. 320 is going to be a major level of resistance to support to the downside. And then 317.45. If we break down below that level, not looking good. So just keep that in mind. But again, we fell dramatically in the past 2 days. Having a bit of a bounce is completely normal. Be ready to go long on Monday and Tuesday. Be nimble. That's it. Just be nimble in the market. So there's that for the entire stock market. If you guys enjoy the content, please make sure to subscribe. Put on post notifications, do all that good stuff. And now let's take a look at the crypto market. All right, currently, very simply, Bitcoin looks very weak. All right, we can see, number one, we can see the MACD is falling lower. Bitcoin is barely holding this level of support. So what we need to see now, today and tomorrow, is we need to see Bitcoin really, really have strong green candles. We need to see Bitcoin break above 41,000. Day and tomorrow, and we need to see it close above 41,000. If it doesn't, then this strong downward momentum is going to continue. We're going to basically bounce up to 40,000, 40,500, and then it's going to continue moving downwards. And that is basically what could end up happening with the stock market as well. We could have a small little move upwards and then continue moving downwards. And of course, Bitcoin is very heavily correlated to the stock market at the moment. So as earnings happen, they're going to affect Bitcoin as well. So let's take a look at the other altcoins as well. Ethereum also very similarly looks weak. It's sitting at support. The MACD is falling lower. Not a good sign. All right. Solana, same concept. Luna showed a lot of strength. So Luna is showing a lot of strength, as well as Tron. So these L1 tokens are showing a lot of strength compared to Bitcoin. And initially, when Luna started showing a lot of strength over here, Bitcoin wasn't showing any strength. This was April 18th. And basically, that signaled. So Bitcoin was trading down here. It was trading around 39,000. Luna had moved a huge, huge green candle. And that was a big reason why, in my opinion, Bitcoin had a green day and started continuing moving upwards because of the strength from the L1 coins. So keep that in mind. Bitcoin needs to break above 41,000. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for everyone that has watched all the way till the end. I love you guys for the support. Thank you so much for all of your support and your love. Really appreciate it. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Have an amazing weekend. Thank you.